Welcome everyone. We're up here in British Columbia with two of my favorite people in the world. I call them the fluffy guys, Clayten Stedmann and Stegman. And last time I think was about a year ago, we got together, did our last interview, and a lot has happened with the technology since then. So I wanted to kind of dive into the updates because you've gotten into some pretty intense programs that you're rebalancing now.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's up for a lot of people right now is the brains aren't functioning all that great. A lot of people, I find a lot of people really frustrated, for example, with short-term memory, just like, boom, out the window. It's like, wait a minute, I was there 2 hours ago, I know the name of that place. Are you seeing the same thing in people? Some short-term kind of spazzing?
We did see it, we saw it in the office, people in the office as well as, friends and family.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems to be consistent.
The nice thing is that you're targeting that, which is great.
Yes.
In a good way. First of all, though, before that, you decided that you're going to dive into the area of harmonizing the harmful effects of EMF frequencies and raise the consciousness of that. So let's talk about why you're doing it, what you're doing, how you can measure the consciousness of EMF fields, that we're being bathed in. So dive into why you decided, what's inspired you to develop this part of the program.
Well, our focus is consciousness. In the FLFE field, we're creating this sanctuary, you could say, or this place of high consciousness, high consciousness field. So that being our focus and that high consciousness field, there for our evolution, for supporting our evolution, we discovered things that were lowering the field, that brought the level of consciousness down. And EMFs is one of those, along with geopathic stresses from flowing waters, underground streams, that sort of thing. That's a whole other subject. And conflicts.
Yeah, personal issues.
Yeah.
Were you finding this, even in your own life, finding just kind of uncharacteristic things flaring up with, your partners, for example, with Audrey or with Sherilyn and like Zeus and I, just things kind of coming in sideways, like what just disturbed the field?
There definitely has been changes happening, as new technologies start to emerge, just different feelings, different energies are in our environment.
Yeah, it does. It seems like they're out of left field sometimes. What are you going to say, Clayten?
Yeah, there seems to be a tipping point where the benefit of all the electronics that we have in the world, the routers, the cell phones, the satellite phones, all the television, all the satellites, there's a tipping point where the benefit begins to diminish to the point where it's maybe causing more damage than good. And we don't know where that is, but there has been changes, and it's hard to put your finger on what it is. We do have consistent kind of calibrations from our research that as a neighborhood has more routers, that it drops the level of consciousness of the properties. And so we'll probably talk today about how they create a sine wave when they come together, and it increases the effect of the amplitude of the signal.
Now, is this even before 5G? Because we have 5G coming out soon, rolling out soon, which I'm hoping to do an interview with Jack Proves on, because he's really big on this and how it's affecting the brain in the cities that already have those little antennas on top of all these houses, apartment buildings, and churches. Some cities are more saturated than others. He said it's intensely affecting the brain now, brain functioning.
Well, it's interesting. There's so many energies in the environment, and there are sine waves, and when those waves stack up, when the peaks line up, you can have a spike of energy. And if that's in a frequency that's not good for humans or good for life, then you can have, an amplified effect. I think that's what Clayten was saying, is you have multiple technologies together, you can have these sine waves overlapping each other. And some technologies have that as part of their function, where you have multiple frequencies being broadcast, and you may have overlaps of purposeful or not. There may be overlaps of peaks, and that can cause issues. So what we look at is the level of consciousness of the environment, because some of these frequencies may be positive, for us. They may add to the energy that's good for us. And we see that in this overall measure of the level of consciousness. Or, I guess we should talk a little bit about level of consciousness and how we measure it for those that haven't seen some
and
of it
how
early.
you can part out and decipher, is it EMFs that are, say, lowering the consciousness? So, yeah, go ahead. Take it away.
Well, this is usually something I talk about because I do more of this. Jeff is great at keeping things moving, and I'm the one that digs into the data typically.
Yeah.
So the main reference point we use is the Hawkins map of consciousness. And it's created by Dr. David Hawkins. His first book, Power versus Force, is really well known. It's a bestseller, so people can look at that. And so when we're measuring a property to look at what's affecting the consciousness, we start to delineate out what are the factors. So, for example, you could use a scale like on a scale of 1 to 100, where 100 represents 100% of the electromagnetic influence in this area. The percentage is, or that's negative. The percentage associated with EMFs is X%, with EMFs under a certain definition. So we have to define it as an electronic device emanating a signal that's lowering the level of consciousness or harmful to life. So we'd say, we find that's X%, and then geopathic stress related to water would be X%, traffic would be X%. So you start to create these pie charts, if you will, of influences. And then one of the things we can do is we will write a program, for example, to counterbalance or harmonize, and we'll talk about this later, there's more than we do than just that, those influences. And so if we write a program for that, the program test very appropriate, we put the program on, and the level of consciousness of the property changes, then it's an indicator that, okay, we figured out that piece.
Right.
Then we take it on and turn it off and check the consciousness. So that's one of our controls when we get into science mode,
Right. Yeah. I mean, there is a nerd element to what you do, of course. And also, this is another thing that comes up is a lot has come up in the last year. You're now on the radar. Once you went public, then you used to have your head above the parapet. And what you're doing is so refined and beautiful. Of course, that's going to attract some attention from whatever forces exist that would prefer the refinement of the human species not be hurried along. Let's just say that. And so you've had to actually kind of take your share of fire, and you also are experiencing some of these incoming frequencies that a lot of people in our community, kind of thought leaders, as you call them, do experience. So you started noticing a whole other array of energies coming in as well, right? Or frequencies coming in as well that you could start putting into the mix and balancing. And I want to say, I love the fact that even your detractors ended up retracting their comments ultimately because it wasn't accurate, and nobody's been able to find fault so far with FLFE. And I say that because I love you guys. I love what you do. So anyway, so yeah, you have even a more complex array of incoming negative energies, which the Sasquatch were saying with Sunbow and some of the people they're communicating with, even psychotronic influences are being perpetrated against not just people like us at the table, but against humanity at large. So now how is that factoring in before we go into more of the details of what you're doing with the EMF?
Well, I would say it's all in the same pot because we're all together in this. Humanity is influenced by all sorts of things. And, our goal is to create the best sanctuary we can. So if it includes us, us in the sanctuary includes all of humanity. So we really want what we do to just be the best sanctuary possible for everybody.
And so that stuff just ends up somewhere as a sliver on the pie chart.
It does, and we don't like to focus on that. What's the intent behind it? But let's just fix it.
Let's fix it. Right. So now
address it.
Yes. So you've been able to effectively, and I would like a couple of examples because most of us learn, including me, by way of examples. Maybe there's some people who've reached out to you because the EF program is in beta testing.
Yes, we're releasing it in December.
In December, right. So not long from now for the general public. But what are you noticing with the EMF program being added into the mix? What are you hearing from people? I mean, are there any kind of extreme examples?
Yeah, I mean, there's people that are very sensitive to EMFs. There are all sorts of energies. And, I put myself on a not so sensitive scale. When when we turn the program on, on my house, I feel just a cleanliness, like a feeling of quiet, and my mind seems to quiet down more. Sleep is more easily, obtained and maintained.
Yes.
But we had someone this summer. She was very sensitive, and we were at a conference together, and we met her outside, and she couldn't go in to the conference because of all the cell phones.
Oh yeah.
And the Wi-Fi.
Yeah. And so
we put the EMF reduction program on the property, and next time we looked, she was in
the room sitting amongst people.
Right.
Yeah. Cool. Very cool.
So that she was very, very sensitive. Headaches.
Yeah.
What else did she say?
She had a really, really bad rash on her arm. That red kind of
lobster skin.
And it would get irritated when she was in a high EMF environment.
Right.
That's her first kind of signal.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was in the environment most of the day after that. That was like a direct cause and effect. She did notice something mild, so that was interesting to look at.
Yeah.
But it was manageable.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, another woman that I was talking to in the FLFE office, she called in, and she was really incapacitated. She couldn't get through the day. She was housebound. Mm-hmm. She couldn't get through the day without a lot of help, including taking a shower by herself was something that was really important to her, and working in the garden. Mm-hmm. And she couldn't do either. I mean, her husband had to help her take a shower at the end of the day.
Wow, she was wiped out.
Really wiped out. Right. And she mentioned at the end of the conversation that when she was near her router, she felt sick. Mm. It's like, oh, well, let's try the EMF program. So she wanted to try it, and we put it on, and almost immediately she began texting me and saying how much energy she had. So she got through the day. In fact, the second day she stayed up till like midnight. She took showers herself, and by the third day she was out in the garden.
Interesting.
Gardening.
So are you saying, was she a previous FLFE customer?
She was on FLFE.
She was on FLFE, but she was still just wiped. That's why she called you, because she was just flattened anyway.
Right. She was improved somewhat by being in the standard service.
But she was still so sensitive to the other incoming.
Yeah. Well, the current service before the EMF program is about a 15% mitigation of the EMF effect. So that's really why we developed the EMF reduction program in order to take it the rest of the way.
Excellent. Anything you want to add to that, Clayten?
There was another person who was living in a cabin in this area, and they had a power line going over the area where the cabin was pretty close. And they had a hard time sleeping at night, really bad nightmares, and signs of depression. And they heard about the service. So they tried it, and again, some effect, some positive effect. But when we put the EMF program on, like that night, it was just a different world for her.
Well, it makes sense. Yeah. I've got to say, just as a personal level, just the last few days since we've been up here, we haven't been sleeping as soundly as we do at home. Of course, I wasn't stopping to think we're on that beta testing. Yeah.
All right.
And people that come into the house, I have a lot of guests that come, girlfriends come and stay overnight. Everyone's like, oh my God, it feels so good. But, it was the same with the original version. But I'm thinking that might be part of that enhancement as well, to knock out the rest of those EMF frequencies. I know people love the feeling of my house.
Yeah, it seems that there's a lot of, we were talking about it last week in the office, there's a lot of electronic smog, we'll call it, in the environment, where it's not only a complete cycle that goes from point A to point B, like say from a tower to our cell phone, but the way we've seen it was like pieces of confetti that are falling off of incomplete signals that don't go all the way through, or curlicues, when you slice an apple with that thing and it makes that swirl.
Yeah.
We apple peeler. We kind of seen those going through the environment as well, and they don't quite sometimes reach their destination. Not all of the signals reach their destination. Okay. So those are coming off and they're just falling through the atmosphere. And so there's a type of electronic smog, and we found a way to reduce that and perhaps even eliminate it as well. So that's another part of it's not only the direct influence, it's just if you live in an urban environment, You can sometimes pick up 15 or 25 Wi-Fi, 15 or 20 Wi-Fi routers
Right.
in an area, just
Yeah,
driving
you
down the
see it.
street.
Yeah,
Pull over on your cell phone,
Yeah.
and you can just like look at all these Wi-Fi
All that
signals.
stuff's passing right
All
through
that's
your field.
passing, yeah.
And there's hundreds, even thousands more that are out of range that they don't show up
Yes.
on your computer.
Yes.
But that sine wave is still, pieces of the sine wave
Pieces of the
are
sine
still
wave.
reaching you, or reaching the environment. So, yeah, so that's an important piece.
That's an important
is
piece.
not just harmonizing or neutralizing the routers that are close by, but also all those incomplete sine waves or pieces of
Right.
EMFs.
Mhm.
Right.
And with 5G, those signals are going way farther than they ever did before.
Okay.
Like even with smart meters, they go miles, right? Some of them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So now smart meters are included in the EMF reduction
Oh, absolutely.
program,
Yes.
of
Oh,
course.
yeah. That
Because
was
that's how I
important.
originally hooked up with you guys. Is Clayten? I knew you from before, but I didn't know your new project. And for anyone who didn't see the first story, it was a friend of mine who was, as you measured her home, it was in the 200s or 220 or so. It was very, very low.
Borderline.
But I had you measure her, saying, "Well, if this stuff works, we'll see it," you know. And she was just almost short of comatose. She was barely getting out of bed, bathing, or anything. Elderly, but not that old. And after you harmonized her house, because she was living near a cemetery, a ditch, under power line, I mean, everything you could have. Oh, smart meters,
Smart meters,
right
all
across
smart
the
meters,
wall
yeah.
from her head where she slept. And so that's what got me excited initially to even investigate it, is because she turned around in a month, she was up moving furniture around the house. So some people have already heard me say that in one of our other interviews, but I just wanted to bring that up. I mean, because again, the smart meter factor was knocking her out completely. So, yeah.
And that was pre
this program.
this program, this EMF. So I would love to do a further experiment with her. And
Well, she's on FLFE, so once it goes to all the homes,
that's right.
yeah, I'd be curious
okay.
to see, how she's doing, because she stayed pretty up, never went down as low as she was before. She has her cycles, but yeah. So anyway, I find that really fascinating, and also we're going to talk about, is there such a thing as too much positive energy, because you really try to stay in a range with people in terms of their environment, because I guess you could probably take someone sideways.
Well, let's back up into what we're doing with the EMFs as they come onto the property, because it's interesting. Some people may know about our cell phone program. So what we discovered, which was really interesting, is if you took a cell phone up to 580 on the Hawkins map, so it's vibrating at this higher vibration, that the emanations from the antennas were now positive for life. So the EMFs that were coming out of the phone became positive for life according to the way we measure using the level of consciousness of the environment, measuring that. So
and people gave you a lot of feedback on that. It wasn't burning their ears and their pockets and their
their
private
hips.
parts for men.
Yeah.
Hips and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah, and using a cell phone, normally if you bring it in front of you, you'll move away from it.
Right.
The kind of kinesiology. And once you have it on this FLFE service, the cell phone program, you'll move towards it. It's said it's positive. It's one way to find the evidence. So when EMFs are coming into an environment and they're lowering the level of consciousness, we're harmonizing in that same way. And the part that really, or the thing that we added that really made a huge difference was shungite.
Shungite. Yeah.
So shungite is really an important mineral, and it's very effective for EMFs.
So the signature of shungite is built into Fluffy?
We brought it into the wave.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So that was a breakthrough for us here. So we're asking the wave to move up into these emanations and harmonize them or turn them into positive energy. I'm going to take it from here.
Yeah, so for some devices, we'll have the FLFE wave go towards the device and harmonize the energy that's coming out. And that's for devices perhaps that are off the property.
What's that mean?
So let's say your neighbor has a router
Oh, I see.
and it's sending a signal through your property, or your neighbor, let's say you're living next to Linda and you have that wall of smart meters. Well, the next apartment over is still getting it.
Right.
So we would have the FLFE wave with the shungite go towards the signal of that device, so that when that energy comes into the environment, it's now positive for life. So we have the in-home kind of compensation,
Right.
which would include every device that has electrical output. We would raise that up to 580 as well, so that whatever's coming out is automatically positive for life, and it automatically adjusts for different devices. Because it was really frustrating beginning trying to do it for one device and another, and then you keep coming up with all devices, you'd be chasing your tail forever, as a metaphor. So we figured out a way of regulating the level of consciousness of the devices so that they all operate within original equipment manufacturers. It's just that cellular seemed to be 580, but some other electronic devices need a little bit more energy to send out positive harmonized energy, and some need a little bit less. So we did that for the cells as well, because different cellular devices will be changing over time.
Okay, so talking about that base frequency 580, I don't know if we talked about this before, but why did you choose 580 versus 780? You know? We just tested it, and that was the level of consciousness of the device that it needed to be at to send out a positive frequency. So what if you jacked it up? Is there such a thing as too much positive energy that's injected into an environment or into the field of people?
Well, we're always balancing our power output, or the power used by the FLFE system, and the good we can do with it. So we were taking it to the minimum that it needs,
right,
to do it, because it just would take more of our energy to take it higher. Yeah, that is an interesting question. Can there be too much positive energy? So we're harmonizing all these sources as they're coming towards the property, whether it's from outside or inside. And so that's adding more positive energy to the property. And so what in our testing and research, if 600 on the Hawkins map starts to be, 560 is the sweet spot that we've chosen for FLFE, because people are supported, in this environment, but they are also functional. They can get up and go to work. Right,
so that's what I was going to ask. What would it feel like if you cranked it up, say, to 700 or above, to the average person on FLFE? I mean, what would be some of the symptoms?
Well, it's very a positive environment to be, and we've done that, of course. We have higher fields that we use, and we create a high field when we do this research together. Right. So, in a high consciousness field, you're connecting to higher truths. Right. Your mind's very quiet. So your mind can be so quiet that you don't remember it's time to go to work.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Kind of be floaty. I'm assuming we've kind of been in this floaty zone, right?
I mean, it's great for meditation. Yeah. But our mission is to create this optimal environment for evolution and
daily function.
Go to work and earn the money we need to pay the rent. So that 600 seemed to be the level, and where if it artificially got pushed above 600 by all this harmonized energy, then we start to deflect, and we start to dissipate instead of bringing this more harmonized energy in. So if things are artificially going above 600 due to incoming harmonized energy, then we switch into deflect and dissipate.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
But many places will reach 600 and above on their own. I mean, if it's a natural due to the person and their practices and feng shui and whatever else has happened there, they could be 600, 610s, not much higher. So, yeah. Okay,
so one other thing before we kind of go on to the brain optimization program too, any wrap-up thoughts on EMF, I welcome, but also the notion that some people have noticed this in terms of plants or house plants on their property. Once you are harmonizing the EMF signals, that their plants seem to perk up.
Absolutely.
So you've seen that directly.
Yeah, we have botanists on the service who are saying, I'm thinking about starting a greenhouse and putting FLFE on it because my plants are so much more vital. Yeah. And we have people who have cut flowers that last 2-3 weeks, and they start to sprout in the water.
Interesting.
Yeah. So we're looking at doing some more kind of controlled experiments, but we have botanists who are professional people that are saying, best garden I've ever had.
We had that property in Boulder too that was, it had really intense EMFs because there were some rock faces that were reflecting
Mhm.
cell tower
Yeah.
signals. And so it was sort of concentrating in this place. And so we saw it as the level of consciousness wasn't coming up to what we expected. So, we did a number of things there, and then we put the EMF program on and it went up. And she saw an increase in her plant growth right away, the health of her plants, because they were sort of baking in this EMF energy. And once we were able to harmonize that, then they were growing much faster for her.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, no, that's good because plants don't lie, right? So, looking at this, is it fair to say to our audience here that since you're still beta testing right now until December, if anyone's super electrosensitive or EMF sensitive, should they try to contact you and get in the beta group?
Yeah,
are you topped off? Or are you getting the data you need now? Or?
No, we're happy to add more FLFE subscribers or people on the free trial that they would like to add the EMF. So
okay.
What we've done is when people call in and they're a subscriber and they tell us that, we tag the record so we know that, and then we can add them too.
Okay.
As long as they talk to the
So even if
person.
they're not subscribers, if they come in, even doing the free trial, you'll still put them on the beta testing? If
Yeah,
they
it's
ask you to?
Yeah, it's only 2 weeks on the free trial, and right now we're only beta testing on the properties.
Okay.
Not on the cell phone. Yeah.
Okay, that's just good to know to let everybody know if someone's really having a problem with that and they know it.
Yeah.
You help them out.
Yeah, we would love to have sensitives to EMF because it's more evidence of the effectiveness of what we're doing to get more of those testimonials.
Okay. Excellent.
Yeah.
So the next one, when does the brain optimization program come out? A lot of people are saying, help, my brain needs help. When is that coming out?
Well, it's interesting because keeping the two separate, like doing EMFs first, it really does help to see, okay, what's EMFs and what's other things.
So you don't want
that
to
are affecting
release
you.
them at the same time, obviously. So these are going to be staggered rollouts?
Staggered rollouts.
Yes, probably in the spring of 2019.
Okay.
We're also likely going to release some energetic medicine tools at that time.
What's that mean?
So, for example, you've heard of EFT.
Yeah.
And we have developed some energetic medicine tools that calibrate extremely high. And when people are going through different circumstances in life, even raising your consciousness can be really uncomfortable at times. We're finding that we're getting a lot of requests for other tools. So we've developed some tools over time, quite a long time ago actually. We're going to release those probably at the same time as the brain optimization.
So you're talking about EFT, which is, it's a practice. It's something you do on yourself. This would would it augment or replace the need to do the actual practice? Well,
generally, the work of Gary Craig, who was the most popular proponent of EFT, his work calibrates about 600 out of 1,000. His teacher, Gary Callahan, Dr. Callahan, his work calibrated about 700 out of 1,000. These energetic medicine tools calibrate 1,000 out of 1,000. There's two of them.
Okay.
So they will accentuate that body of work that's out there, and you can use them in addition to that. We've really granularized the process of exactly how it works, and we'll probably do we talked about maybe doing several hours of sort of explanation and context and talking about the difference between what's a body of work that calibrates at 600, 700, 900, and give examples of those. And here's the difference in distinction between this level and that level. So just to kind of educate people on energetic medicine and then how they can use it.
Okay, excellent. And now what it's bringing to my mind is I'm thinking one thing I kind of I pound away at, I would say, throughout my interviews and throughout my commentaries and so forth, are encouraging people to find ways using various techniques and so forth to begin listening to their own true voice. It sometimes comes through just a feeling or a desire first. But do you think you're going to go in the direction of maybe creating not a frequency, but a consciousness program that will allow people to maybe open to their higher selves with a little more ease, or is that just kind of too ethereal and off the charts for the time being?
Well, that's a beautiful question.
Maybe we're just planting a seed here.
Yeah, it's a great seed.
Yeah.
I mean, what we're trying to do, or what our mission is with FLFE, is to give people the space, the freedom to connect.
Right.
to quiet the mind and have that higher
And you're
energy.
already doing that.
So there is that, but you're talking about taking it to
Like
the
a
next
little
level.
turbo boost for
Yeah,
that
yeah.
process of opening up to the non-physical
Mhm.
higher aspect of self.
Mm.
Specifically, I don't know. I mean, maybe that takes a field of 700 or 800. I don't know. You'd have to calibrate, I guess. It's just a thought,
Yeah.
you know.
Interesting.
One of the thoughts that we've had is an app for a phone.
Well, that's kind of what I was seeing in my head. Yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah, you're
Yeah.
probably right on it. So with a booster,
Yeah,
you
with
know,
a
for a
booster.
period of time,
Yes,
again, for people to be functional,
right.
you know, what would be great is we could go off for a month and you could spend, you know, 3 weeks in a field and a week recovering, you know,
Yeah.
a high field and really.
That's kind of what I'm thinking, or even if it's 30 minutes for meditation and prep for that, to start opening up more and more until we start feeling and hearing and sensing these influences and our own guidance coming from our true self coming through to us, you know.
Yeah.
And I know you're already setting the stage for it. I get that because I enjoy the field myself.
Yeah. But that's
Yes.
great.
Yeah. Well, we have a new backend in our website, Memburium, which allows us a lot of capacity that we didn't have before.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm imagining.
What is the word you use?
Memburium.
What's that mean?
It's the customer portal while customers come in and interact with FLFE.
Okay.
So that's where you go in
right.
and you can turn your property on and off to experiment
Yes.
with contrast. You can change your address.
Yeah.
You know, change your credit card, little things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But that platform allows us to do more things. So, for example, if we wanted to do a 30-minute higher level of consciousness field in a home during the day, people could go on and click a timer and maybe it could go up to a certain level and then it would turn off. Whereas
I love
before,
the
that would be
idea.
very difficult. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I love the idea. It's just, okay, good. Well, we're just coming up with stuff here
Yeah.
ourselves. So, okay, so now for the next one, for the brain optimization, we talked about this in the very beginning. A lot of people's brains are struggling right now.
Mm-hmm.
And not only that, we're being bombarded with so much stimuli, false input, that one of the real issues I find, and a lot of our viewers find too, is the discernment of what's true when you're being bombarded with so much of what's manipulative and untrue.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got that, which is a consciousness thing, but it is being stimulated from the outside artificially. So let's talk about, maybe blend that in with our conversation about the brain optimization program, what its original intention is, and how it works within those kinds of fields.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the brain optimization program came out of, for me personally, it came out of a friend of mine who used to sit and pray for his body in the evening. His name was John. He was an 89-year-old. He was the first person I formed a study group with. He was an active chiropractor at the time. And I would go over to his place once in a while. And he'd be sitting in front of his fireplace with a crayon book, typically reading this book. And he would stop and he would pray for his liver. Oh, thank you, liver, for doing all the things you did today. He'd talk to his liver. And I was around there reading a book or doing something. And then he'd start praying for another part of his body. And of course, we all heard this. We've all heard the expression "thoughts are things."
Right.
But he actually did it. And I guess we're all doing it. And he did it really consciously.
Mm-hmm.
And he was vital and energetic. And he said he thought that was his key to being a vital 89-year-old person still in private practice. In fact, he was thinking about doing a career change to be more of a healer or just an energetic healer or a landscaper.
Interesting.
Yeah, interesting guy at 89.
Professions at 89. I love it.
So really the brain program came out of that. It's like, well, John was praying for his body and it worked for him. And so let's see what we could do in terms of positive prayers for different parts of the body. And then we finally got to the brain. It's like, oh my God, we should really focus on the brain.
It's interesting because even the other organs of the body are all they're portals of sorts to a level of consciousness into other aspects of ourself, even kind of interdimensionally, I think, is some belief, right?
Chinese medicine talks about the liver holding anger, the pancreas, the spleen.
Right.
They all have their energetic signature or emotion that's associated with them. If you're struggling with an emotional state, it'll affect that organ.
That makes perfect sense. So, of course, the brain, right?
Yes.
So where did you begin with that? I mean, how do you even begin to measure this?
So what we do is for an organ, we would look at medical journals, and we would we'd find the world's leading researchers on brain.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, one of them is Dr. Daniel Amen. Just have to remember his name.
Mm-hmm.
So we would find the top researchers in the world, and we would measure their understanding of the brain. So on a scale parallel to the Hawkins map of consciousness, where 1,000 represents a complete understanding of brain function,
Mm-hmm.
both structure and operational efficiency,
Mm-hmm.
the level of the understanding of Dr. Daniel Amen is, let's say it's 900. I don't know what it is. So there'd be some things that maybe somebody else would understand better. So we go out and find the rest of that truth.
Mm-hmm.
And then we know we have good references so that we understand what's the optimal conditions. And then we would start to write programs to create those optimal conditions. So sometimes you're wanting to add certain things, like add energy. Sometimes you're wanting to request that there's an increased circulation or a change in some type of function under a certain condition, or there's just so many variables. But we've done this so much now, we have kind of a process.
Mm-hmm.
I just can't think of it all off the top of my head. Jeff might pick some of it up.
Mm-hmm.
But that's how we begin. We have to gather the truth of what the possibility is, and then we start removing conditions or adding influences to create the greatest possibility
Mm-hmm.
within the restrictions of the technology.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, looking at the structure of the brain is one way to measure it. So if you have an optimal brain structure, based on these journals, and really based on, our measurements of what the optimal brain could be. So you have the structure of various parts of the brain. So it's how it's built physically.
Mm-hmm.
That's one way to measure. And then the other is how well is it operating? So you have what we call operational efficiency, or OE. And so there you're looking at, based on the structure that's there, how well is it operating? Because you could have a 100% brain, but what you're eating is creating inflammation in such a way that it's operating less well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So there's environmental factors, and it could be EMFs or other outside factors that, they may damage the structure. We have found they damage the structure of the brain or degrade those readings over time, and the operation can go down, but they are somewhat independent.
Right. Okay. So that's how you're able to determine what an optimized state looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So now, again, this is in beta testing. You're noticing, we talked about at the beginning, even people in the office, it's like, blip, where'd that piece of information go? It was just there a second ago. And that's what my own soul group guides have said over the last 20, 30 years, is that you're going to keep seeing this dissipation even where young healthy people are having these kind of blip outs. And I think some of this might be explained too, maybe when we talk to Senbo a little later on about this whole notion of time and space and the alterations of what appears to be almost the speed of time could be affecting that too. But either way, we're being affected by it. And so what's happening in the beta program thus far that you've seen?
Short-term memory is
Yes.
one of those major factors that we've seen improve.
Okay.
Yeah, people in the office.
Yes.
And you had a way of measuring that, I believe,
Yes, well, we measure the structural optimization of the part of the brain that controls short-term memory.
Mm-hmm.
And then we measure the operational efficiency of that part of the brain. And there's a corollary experience with the people and their spouses who are telling us that their short-term brain is improving or degrading. So we've done, not that we've done thousands of people, but I've done thousands of tests with people too. And so we know that I really trust our data, because we're seeing that when their short-term memory goes up, they're having an experience, and people around them are having an experience that they're not forgetting things.
Right.
So we trust our data on that part. But that's how we measure things. We measure structure and then operational efficiency. Because it's the only thing that really the only part of the body that we've noticed that consistently goes over are the adrenals. So you have the adrenals saying that they're at 80% structure optimization, but then the operational efficiency can go to like 100, 110, 120%. And that's when you're in fight or flight.
Right.
They're just going, they're just pumping, right?
Yeah.
So that would be an example of something being overclocked or overrun or being stressed. Usually it's below.
So if you're talking about I notice with people in general is there's a certain amount of fear that starts setting in when the brain starts failing them, and I see this now in just people at large. Just casual conversation with people. It's like, God, I can't remember names anymore or something. And these aren't terribly old people at all. This shouldn't be happening at that. Shouldn't theoretically be happening at this stage of life. But there's so much interference coming in that can start denigrating that portion of the brain. Is that what you're finding? That whether it's EMFs or whatnot, it's just too many influences coming in that are starting to affect the brain poorly?
Yeah, I mean, we're really looking at what's the effect. It seems to be our
you're just
default.
The effect.
It's okay.
That's true. You don't focus on who's doing what to whom. You focus on what it looks like and how to fix it. But are you seeing something that's creating a lowered efficiency?
Well, there's such a mixture of effects. Diet, is a big one, and we do focus on diet, and while we don't make a lot of dietary, recommendations.
We're going to, hopefully.
Just getting more omega-3s, just the fatty acids for the brain. The feeding the brain the fats and there's experts out there in health along those lines, and we see that in ourselves. We take a lot of omega-3s for brain support, and so that's part of feeding the brain. In order to repair itself, it needs those fats, and it needs the minerals.
Boy, do I resonate with what you're saying at the moment. Yeah. Just this morning, Azus was saying, "Oh God, I haven't taken my EMFs for a couple of days," and I thought, "Oh my God, I haven't taken it for 2 or 3 months." We moved. And for me, once I can't see something, I don't think this is an uncommon phenomenon. It's gone. It's not in my awareness anymore till I see it again and think, oh, right. And, I said I've been having all this brain fuzz and everything. I've been doing no EMFs at all.
Omega-3s, you mean?
Yeah. No, so EMFs.
We don't want to correct you.
EMFs. Sorry. EMFs. Yeah, I've been doing no omega-3s or 6 or, a little bit of 9 and 6s, but no omega-3s. So this is part of, it's important to note that because you can only do so much through the quantum resonance that you're offering people with, fluffy, but we still have to take care of the rest ourselves. So let's talk about those on the ground things. Okay, we need EFAs, omega-3s.
and magnesium.
Magnesium.
We've found that the two together are supporting nerve health, the myelin sheath particularly. So the omegas and the magnesium taken within 30 minutes of each other is very helpful for brain and nervous system.
Can you take them together? Does it have to be 30 minutes apart?
Just within 30 minutes.
So you can take them together.
Yeah.
And so you guys do this, I assume, in the morning, noon, and night type of thing?
Yeah.
We're on our game.
Yeah. We haven't forgotten.
You have to be optimized in order to do what you do. I get it, and thank you so much for the reminder, and not only that, the reinforcement this morning. I was just like, my body so needs omega-3s. I can feel it. It's, like craving almost.
Yeah, and the magnesium and the potassium and all the other minerals that are just not in our diet the way they were, 100 years ago.
Well, and these are all anti-inflammatories as well, right?
Interesting.
It definitely, because Udo Erasmus,
Yes,
grandpa of omega-3s through, the modern field of health and wellness. I think Udo did more than probably anyone to bring attention to omega-3s and essential fatty acids in general. And wow, is he a picture of health. I haven't seen him for about a year, but the man glows. He glows from the inside out, and his brain's on fire all the time. And he walks his talk. He takes his own product. Udo's oil or whatever. I'm not advertising for that. There are a lot of good sources. You guys use some other sources too, but however you get them in your body, I see him as a living example of what continued use over the last 25 years of omega-3s have done. So thank you. And for all of us, thank you for that reminder too.
Yeah, it seems to be the pillars of brain health is, taking what you need to repair yourself.
Right.
And staying out of those environments that are difficult. Like you say, there's so much incoming.
Right.
So, do you want a 5G router in your house?
Yeah,
no.
and see, there's another problem here that affects the brain, and then that affects the emotions.
Mm-hmm.
So people are so overwhelmed. Right now, it's just a kind of almost like a soul exhaustion trying to get through life and kind of keep the game up. It's just feels like a battlefield for a lot of people. Just getting by, doing what you have to do to make money, and then going home and trying to meditate and bring it all back up again. And then if you're really exhausted, you go on Netflix or YouTube or whatever, and you start watching things that are kind of, they can be anywhere from thrilling to salacious or intriguing, but they're taking your brain down rabbit holes that are not particularly productive just to escape from everything. And this is, we all do it. I mean, this is a phenomenon that we've kind of started doing for escape. And what is that doing to the brain?
Yeah, and that leads to...
And then you got the blue lights coming in off the screens too. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, these shows, if they're below 200, they create what we call a negative entrainment field. So if you have murder, all the things that really stimulate,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. You can feel it if you want to throw up.
Yeah, you feel it in your body if you're not too far into it. And that, we've all gotten lost in them, right? Where you're watching a TV show, and then especially on Netflix, because you can watch 3 or 4 or 5 episodes in a row.
Yeah, you can binge on 200 and under.
Yeah, and then when you're stuck in it, it's hard to get out.
Yeah.
So it creates a negative entrainment field.
And that does dull the function of the brain.
Oh, it does everything. It does all the, except maybe the adrenals.
Oh, yeah,
because
that's right,
you're
because
shocked, fight or flight. Yeah. So that's something to watch. And it's a little hard to measure that stuff. We do it because we're, we're into kinesiology.
Well, we know, we can feel it.
We can feel
know
it,
we go to bed feeling less than, we've done that. And so I just bring it up because we're doing it to escape from the incredible pressure of life right now, but it's not a very good escape. And I wish there were beautiful programs that just brought frequencies sky high. But honestly, I haven't found very many.
There's some.
Some documentaries, but I mean, you go to Netflix, not too much. If you know of a few, please do tell, so people can binge on the 500 and above juicy stuff. I'm not really seeing it out there. So now we have that field too, that we're doing self-inflicted. Okay, so now let's talk about what you're doing with the brain optimization to help boost all that back up. And it's on us if we choose to take it down before we go to bed at night. That's a decision we make. And I just want to put that out there. You can't help that, but you can help the background of it, right?
Well, it'll be interesting for people to try the EMF first, to see how that affects their brain health and keep nutrifying, as we said.
Hydrating, big deal.
Yeah, that's a big one too. Yeah. And those shows, particularly the ones that are violent, there's a shock and a trauma happening, just as though it's happening to us. Or, we're not distinguishing in our brain. So that's another piece that we're taking on, and is shock and trauma or health, brain health, through some new things we've discovered. We can talk about that in another interview, but it's all part of brain health. Is not only is the structure good, are things functioning well, then is there trauma there? That's causing an overload of the nervous system.
Trauma.
Oh, we all do.
Yeah. So the brain optimization is going to be targeting trauma as well.
There's a separate program.
A separate?
For it,
Okay.
That's coming either with it or soon after.
Yeah, we just have to figure out. We're going to call it emotional health, I think.
Okay, excellent.
Because we found out where the shock and trauma is stored in the auras, in the auric shields.
Yes.
And then we were able to kind of release some of that. So it's very interesting.
That is interesting. Yes. That goes really deep because some of it we bring into an incarnation with us.
Yes.
Some of it we experience here. Some of it we just keep exacerbating by playing out those same programs.
Yeah. So when you get the support of the technology, then you get the energetic medicine techniques. When we'll have ours and we'll recommend others, then that kind of creates another level of synergy for emotional health.
Okay.
So that's why we wanted to address the self-directed energetic medicine techniques at the same time.
Well, I'm looking forward to that. That's not till springtime. So coming up right away, we have the EMF program. So we're inviting people to, if they want to experiment with it, they can come to you if they're sensitive. So we already went through that. Any final thoughts on either one of these before we say goodbye this time?
Meanwhile, the times are challenging, and there is so much incoming right now. We're really excited. I'm excited. I think we're both excited about what's happening to the planet. There's so much good occurring. The level of consciousness of the planet is rising quickly. More in history, we did a webinar on the history of consciousness, and it's rising in a state that it
That's
hasn't.
good to hear. I think a lot of people are feeling defeated. That's really good to hear.
Yeah, it's really, really positive sign that things are rising quickly. And so trauma's coming up to be healed, and things are happening, and it feels chaotic, but my takeaway is that we're in a positive change mode, and it's really good for humanity.
On that, thank you both so much. It's so good to see you again, as always. You know, I love coming up and hanging out with you guys here at BC. So thank you for your hospitality, and thank you for the information and the new programs you're developing on behalf of all of us. Best URL?
www.flfe.net.
It's still .net. Okay,
Yes.
Very good. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Regina.
Until next time, thank you for joining us here on reginameredith.com. Thank you for watching this video. You can find many more like it free of charge by going to reginameredith.com. And if you're finding that this kind of content is adding value to your life, you might want to support my work by clicking on the Patreon button on the website, reginameredith.com. As a patron, you have special videos, insider commentary, and much more. Check it out.